Hello dear ones, and welcome to a new edition of the Top 10 PPC News for the third week of August. What are we talking about in this edition, as if it doesn't become mandatory otherwise for conversion tracking? We are clearly talking about Google Ads Googles. Apologies. Without actually apologizing for the early August bugs in shopping campaigns. You chose the ideal target audience. Optiscore and performance, there is a correlation. Winning short ads and generally winning characteristics in videos on YouTube. Demand chain with video partners and scale well even with very large budgets. As for Meta, we have a mini guide to instant form and also a method to improve the quality of laws. Finally, the recap of the upcoming news on Snapchat ads. But let's start right away with the news, with an extra news item that comes from feedami.com, that is. Emmanuel Flossie, who, in a video published some time ago, explains how to bypass the issues with loading supplemental feeds in the new Google Merchant Center next. I am publishing it now because Giuseppe Scolo has noticed that there are a series of problems. I don't know if only in the Italian network or at an international level, precisely in the supplemental feeds, and therefore it is useful to recall it now. But let's immediately look at news number 10 of this week. It is the recap by Andrew Hutchinson on socialmediatoday.com that summarizes all the innovations being released in Snapchat ads, which will likely make it the fifth force in the pay-per-click market, excluding, of course, programmatic advertising platforms. News number 9. Great post by Nicholas Garfinkel on ppcero.com, who has been, for some time, the manager of eBay's search campaigns. So, a huge budget. He was asked to scale the spend by $150 million. And this is what he found interesting to measure exactly what to do, how much to scale, and where. He essentially based himself on three metrics: marginal ROI, incrementality, and the lifetime value of each acquisition of each user acquired through eBay's database. And here he explains exactly why and how he evaluated this information, these metrics, important to understand, even though I doubt any of us will ever have to spend an additional 150 million euros on our campaigns. News number 8. Thomas Etchell on LinkedIn.com noted that in demand gen campaigns, it is now possible to activate Google's video partners. Interesting news to test with great care, because Google's video partners have often been at the center of quality issues of placements, so be careful not to activate them and then ignore the campaign. But let's do some testing before opening this new channel. News number 7. Katarina Tyndall on LinkedIn.com shared an open source tool from Google. She works for Google as an advertising solution architect, and it is an artificial intelligence tool capable of evaluating how our video operates within the framework that Google has identified as best practices for videos. It checks whether the video is able to capture users' attention, if there is correct use of the brand, if there is a connection between the video users and what is being said in the video, and finally, the direction given to users as the final call to action. So from here, A, B, C, E, framework. News number 6. Actually, there are two. One comes from donluma.com. And here, Don provides a summary of all the settings and best practices for using Facebook's instant forms, along with a whole series of guidelines on how to use them in an optimized manner clearly, so it is not just a mini guide that is valid for the time in which Facebook does not change the interface, which is brief, but there are a whole series of details and operational guidelines on how to work. You can see how long this post is, so I highly recommend reading it to anyone using this type of campaign on Facebook. The main problem with these campaigns is often the quality of the leads that are acquired. In this regard, I have paired this post with another post by Bravan Leal, who coincidentally talks about the same thing this week, where he explains a two-stage mechanism to improve lead quality. First, a broad campaign is run to select a warm audience, and then a more targeted campaign is conducted to capture, let's say, higher quality leads. Alternatively, a few questions can be added to the forum, as I also do with my promotions. News number 5. A post on thinkwithgoogle.com, where the results of an analysis of more than 2,000 short ads are shown, explaining what to do and what not to do in short ads. So it is interesting to get an idea of the most shared best practices in this type of advertising. News number 4. Also on LinkedIn.com, Nova Hopkins shared a preliminary announcement about a forthcoming study from Optimizer, which shows a correlation between the optimization score, known as optiscore, and campaign performance in terms of cost per acquisition, conversion rate, and ROAS, Ritorno sull'investimento pubblicitario. This correlation is interesting because many specialists, myself included, say to be extremely cautious with Google's advice. So, in fact, I also, quite broadly, ignore the part about account optimization. Hence, the advice. However, this mathematical correlation, which is not a matter of opinion, indicates that there is indeed a correlation between the accepted recommendations and performance. I would add, now we need to see the study in detail, the study when it comes out. But attention to the optimization score also indicates a well-managed account, that is, an account that is subject to perhaps daily changes, and therefore the recommendations are evaluated, excluded, or applied. So, the fact that there is this correlation does not necessarily mean that all the suggestions are good and should be applied, but it does mean that they are starting to become interesting. This process of improving the quality of optiscore's recommendations has been underway for a while. Deuce number 3. I hate Ruben Brunbaum, always on linklink.com. Here, Ruben shares their framework, their operating procedures, on adjusting the target ROAS, that is, their spending target, to maintain a positive return on ad spend, and explains when they raise it, when they lower it, and what cases might arise as a result of these changes. News number 2. The silver medal. Google apologizes for the bug that occurred in shopping campaigns at the beginning of August, in the first week of August, which caused some advertisers who promote other advertisers' products with their own money. Additionally, some account metrics were shared in the reports of other advertisers, hence competitors. However, this apology email actually apologizes for very little and is also a bit vague and opaque, as is Google's tradition, so there are quite a few professionals, myself included, who have something to say about how it was conceived, about the refunds that are provided. For example, no refund is provided for those who did not suffer direct damage, but simply had their metrics shared in other accounts, simply because they told others to delete those reports they had downloaded. Now, I won't comment because this thing speaks for itself, but let's say it's somewhat in line with what a monopolist like Google can afford to do. News number 1. Post on LinkedIn.com by Thomas Etchell. Again, here, Thomas reports a communication from Google in which they essentially tell advertisers that if they do not implement concept mode 1 or 2, they will disable conversion tracking. We are naturally talking about the European Economic Area and therefore advertisers operating in this space. It was more or less to be expected, a fairly drastic measure, so the concept mode has effectively become mandatory to use Google Ads in Europe. Also because Google Ads without conversion tracking is a bit like trying to optimize by praying. That's all. It's all very unlikely to achieve without knowing where the conversions are coming from. Well, that's all for this week. See you next time. May ROI be with you and more peace for everyone. Goodbye.